the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 172, recorded Friday, December 5th, 2014. Youth is King.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. AVWeek. This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tom Albright. I am your host for today. We did one of these about 6 months ago. It's a reporters roundtable. We did it as we were leading into InfoComm. This is probably one of my favorite shows to do, and these nice people have been gracious enough to join us. First up, I believe this is Lindsay's first time, so we'll start with her. Lindsay Adler, she is Associate Editor at Systems Contractor News and Residential Systems. How are you, ma'am?
Very well, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Margot Duwahi. She survived the first round of this, so she came back for more.
Great to be here. Wonderful. Thanks.
Goodness gracious.
In stereo.
Yes, in stereo and quadraphonic sound. And yeah, most of you people are too young to know what quadraphonic sound is. So get a Beatles record from like 67 or 68. Tom LeBlanc is not that young. I'm giving him a hard time. Tom and I are the same age. He is the editor of Commercial Integrator and Tech Decisions. How are you, sir?
Good. That reminded me of when Ashley Simpson hosted SNL and the audio started to play back on her while she was lip syncing.
Now, see, that I would find enjoyment out of. Back on myself, not so much. So, a couple things before we get started. First of all, very big congratulations. Very proud of this young man, Josh Schrago. Schrago. I always screw up his name. Josh is from an integrator out in San Francisco. He's also a big part of AVNation. He has recently been named as the chair of the CTS group for InfoComm. So congratulations to Josh. And if you're watching this live or you get this on Monday, we're about $4,000 short on our Kickstarter. So if you have $5, throw it in, and George Tucker and Chris Netto can go cover ISE for you. So apparently the internets at in Boston are giving us trouble, so Craig McCormick will be joining us shortly, I promise. First up, I kind of want to go around the horn, and Lindsay, we'll start with you. I want to ask a very simple question, right? And that is, what was 2014 the year of? All of you covered this industry for a long time. Everything from CES in January of this year, and we're at the end, the beginning of December, so it's actually about a month away now for 215. But from CES all the way through CEDIA and all the shows in between, from your perspective and from the things that you've seen, Lindsay, what do you think 2014 is going to be remembered as the year of for AV?
Well, for better or for worse, and I might be stealing everyone's thunder here, but to me, this was the year of the huddle room, and okay. Love it or hate it. Term, we could definitely use a more interesting term for that, but that's what it is. And I guess 2013 was really, this is a new thing, this huddle space. We first started to hear about it 2012, 2013 probably, and we started to see it expanded. And this year, everybody has it. It's what everybody's doing. And, I hear from people who have gone from 2 conference rooms to like 10,000 collaboration spaces. It's exceeding on a big scale. We asked integrators recently just about, is it here to stay? Actually, earlier in the year, we asked them if it was here to stay, and the answer was resounding. It has been here to stay. So I think looking into 2015 now, we should look to see it really be refined and have all the technology that's being integrated into those spaces, BYOD, of course. See everything become a lot more seamless and efficient and less glitches, but we're still seeing more of these collaboration technologies pop up on the market all the time too, something interesting to watch who these newcomers continue to be and who is really steadfast in the market in terms of leading or on whatever level that they communicate on.
Okay. No, I like it. The year of the huddle space and BYOD. Mr. LeBlanc, what do you think?
I hate it.
Do what?
Oh, I said I hate it. Just the term is so silly.
No, but here's the thing. It works, right? It works. What else are you going to call it?
What it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Which term do you hate? Huddle room?
Huddle room, yeah. Or huddle space.
Yeah, it is kind of an odd term to be huddling around with your coworkers.
Huddling around as many devices as possible.
But I agree with Lindsay. I think that huddle rooms and collaboration are really, kind of the things that 2014 will be remembered by in terms of big trends, technology-wise. From a business perspective, talking to a lot of integration firms, and right now I'm in the midst of kind of like pouring through a lot of year-end research that we do at CI, and for me, I feel like this is the year when, for integration firms, things are really starting to look up. You can like point to numbers, you can point toward enough improvement over enough years where you can kind of say, yeah, the recession is very much in the rear window, but it's a weird sort of tone that I get from interviewing guys. And guys are really, they don't want to fall into any of the traps that they fell into a few years ago. So they're really, very concerned about their businesses. They're optimistic, but it's also like they have their guards up. They're really trying to fight and trying to work, upstream in the market. And I don't know, it's really, it's like a fighting mentality that I see in the industry, and it's really kind of cool to watch. So I think that 2014 is a year of recovery, but one of cautious optimism as well.
Do you think they're fighting to be optimistic? Like they're trying not to be too optimistic, Tom? Is that what they're doing? They don't want to get too excited just in case the rug gets pulled out from under them again?
I think a lot, after the recession, I think a lot of companies kind of, realized that they weren't diversified enough. They realized that they were more vulnerable than they realized they were in the market space. And I think the reason that their guards are up is that they realize it doesn't matter if things are looking up if they're not continuing to work hard on their business. And I don't think the fighting mentality is a bad thing. I think it's a very good and positive strategic thing.
Okay. All right. Margot, what do you think the year of 2014 is going to say when we close the book on it? What will this be the year of?
I think definitely collaboration is the new convergence. And even though that is implied within the huddle space, I think it's also something that is malleable in the sense that I saw it a lot in ed tech coverage that we did and in corporate coverage. We just had a special tech manager's guide to corporate AV installations, and I think the growing concern from the tech manager's perspective is how to offer both the high-end, executive boardroom capabilities as well as cover the BYOX, so whatever it might be that employees and students, are bringing in to the facility. So asking that, in real time, how, you can kind of move to a more agile, smaller collaboration that is, easy to operate, relatively inexpensive, not a lot of need for space, and something that can really be upgraded when it needs to be. So software as a service, we're seeing that a lot of cloud-based, much more. I wouldn't necessarily call it a banner year, even though there's a tremendous amount of interest in it. It's just that it's a year where I think it really gained a lot of traction. So, and I mean, definitely seeing some of the teething pains with it as well. For example, getting content off of devices and onto a screen is about compatibility. So if you're working with an all AirPlay, infrastructure, for example, you're going to have a lot of trouble with Droid-based and Windows devices. So people are figuring out how to refine that and how to recalibrate, thinking around something, again, might be a breakout room or a couple of breakout rooms in a university setting, or maybe healthcare where there are little rooms because the general network has some limitations. So we actually ran a really interesting feature in our December edition, which is available now on AV Network by the amazing Lee Badman, about modern Wi-Fi, modern problems, and he addresses some of these collaboration points that I'm talking about right now.
Do you think some of the wireless video conundrums, the fact that you've got, you can have an all iOS system, yes, but the first time someone walks in with an Android device, then you're going to have issues. Do you think some of these other, let's call them third parties, right? Whether it's AMX or Crestron or Barco or whoever, do you think that's going to give them a leg up over putting it all in an all iOS and an all Android system?
You mean like, for example, the like the Barco ClickShare?
Yeah, the Barco. So in other words, a brand agnostic, right? They don't care who you are. They'll throw your video up on any place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And also, for the AV folks, the men and women who are managing facilities and who are the tech directors, they're participating more in security and directory services and authentication more now than ever before. So achieving like security on the IT environment is much more about encrypting traffic. And, so if looking at third-party systems that kind of offer that security, for example, the AMX Enzo pretty much wipes everything after one session. I don't know the exact specifics, so definitely if you're interested, look up for more particulars. But when you think about the variety of what employees are bringing in, even if you have a company-wide enterprise mobile policy, nobody really pays attention to that and honors that 100%. We actually ran a really interesting article about that on EduWire. So, how are you getting your IT department to manually configure is more of a question of, what's something that the entire team can kind of agree on and sign off on and make it easiest for users to just take that guesswork out of it and make it more automatic. So yeah, absolutely. I think the third-party systems are very appealing, especially for again, going back to the higher ed sector, for let's say, you have a presenter or a professor who is, itinerant, or, you have one room, that variety of users, you have changing user base and changing user needs continually, perennially. So whatever's going to make that less complicated is definitely more appealing. Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mr. McCormick, you'll have the last word on this from your perspective and your standpoint. What do you think 2014 is going to be known as the year of?
I think focus is one word that I've kind of heard a lot. It seems like during the recession that a lot of companies had to kind of figure out what they were good at, and they were kind of going into a whole bunch of different markets and seeing, am I good in this market? Am I having any luck in this market? Is there any money to be made in this market? And they kind of found out what they're good at and maybe what they're not so good at. And I think even now that the economy is turning around to some degree, I think there's still some focus, and they're kind of learning what they're good at and understanding what they're good at and going to stay focused on that, and I think that makes it better for everybody. I mean, there's certainly something to be said for an integrator where you can get everything no matter what market you're in, but I think having some level of specialization is also a good thing.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. All right, we're gonna kind of turn our focus. The one thing I like about having reporters on is that I can get to use their articles. So, and I try to be as diplomatic as possible. So we'll start out with our spread it around. The first one is actually from SCN, looking at actually ahead at 2015, and some of the service the top areas in AV that are quote unquote poised for growth in 2015. So Margot, we'll start out with you, but we'll ask all four of you guys. What do you think, and from the people that you've talked to, both manufacturers but also integrators, because all four of you deal with dealers as well, and tech managers and end users. Margot, what are you hearing as the possibilities for 2015?
Definitely 4K. I mean, as anyone who knows me knows, I'm extremely skeptical of most things, but I asked Display Search for a report recently for one article we're doing on 4K, 8K, Ultra HD viewing patterns and what tech managers really need to understand about it. And they gave me a figure which was incredible, actually. So in Q3 2014, 347,000 units shipped, so that may or may not seem like a lot depending on your frame of reference, but what's really important to know is that in terms of 4K, that's a 2,000% increase year on year. So that's really interesting to me, just looking at that figure. Again, it's something that I think people are talking about more. You're hearing it more in the mainstream consciousness. I even saw a commercial for 4K viewing on the consumer level, of course, for I believe it was Samsung during the holiday season. And Samsung actually has 52% of the market, followed by Sony and then LG, then Vizio. So it'll be cool and interesting to see how different applications for it, come to the fore. Obviously, the high-res viewing in certain sectors like architecture and simulation, you'll hear more about that. But for the most part, I think people are still asking, do we need it? In digital signage, how much of a benefit is it? So definitely seeing that interest in growth in 4K.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm not skeptical. I'm incredibly bullish. I freaking love 4K. And if you can make it out of an OLED, I'd be even happier. Mr. LeBlanc, what do you see in your tarot cards there for 2015?
I mean, I think the big thing is just, is communication. A lot of the technologies that we're talking about are really about creating ways for companies and people to communicate better. And we're going to see that pushed forward a lot in, 2015. And, Tim, you were at the CI Summit a couple of weeks ago, and one of the comments that somebody made was that expectations have really gotten higher when it comes to communication expectations because, people are used to communicating in a sort of an elevated way on their phones and in their homes, and then they expect that level of communication in the workplace too. And that kind of puts it on, integrators and designers and consultants to kind of raise the level of experience and workplace communication. And I kind of feel like we're going to see, that pushed forward in terms of collaboration and 4K experiences in the office space in 2015. And then meanwhile, there are a lot of, sort of commercial video applications where a high level of experience is already expected, even before, 2015. And what's going to happen is because experiences are, getting better in workplace environments, they have to get 10 times better in experiences that are supposed to be great, like in museums and, like a retail environment where you're interacting with digital signage. Everything seems to need to get better. And I think it's going to be exciting for that reason to kind of see where everything goes.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Lindsay, from your standpoint, what do you think 2015, what are some of the emerging technologies or the areas of growth for integrators or for manufacturers?
Yeah, what I'm really interested in watching in 2015 is the way that service and service plans continue to grow in importance, the way that the business climate has continually gotten more competitive, and with a shift away from hardware devices, with all of these trends we were talking about with the cloud and collaboration spaces, the integrators need to differentiate themselves from each other primarily on service, I hear, on a lot of different levels. So it's recurring type of service plans and, continual training that end users are requiring, and the way that the technology changes so quickly also just staying on top of everything and enabling users to be able to use all of the amazing features that the technology is driving out. So it's also a really great opportunity for the integrators, I think, too, to be able to stay constantly as a reminder with their clients that they're there if they need them, and that it's really easy to communicate and have their needs met. And I think it's a good business opportunity for the integrators also. I see there are certain ones in the market that they can subscribe to, but there are also, especially with the larger integrators, I'm seeing a lot of them create their own service plans and their own cloud services to offer to their enterprise clients, for example, and I think it's big with education also. So curious to see where the trend goes, if it is more so with these dedicated companies, software companies, that are selling these service plans for integrators, or if it's going to be integrators kind of making their own individual solutions, if it's going to be a balance between those two things, or if we're going to see it move in one direction or the other.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are a number of integrators that I work with that have 1 or 2 or 3 software developers on staff, right, just to do that thing, just to do that very thing.
Right, and they all should. It's smart, yeah, but is it 1 or 2 dedicated software people, or is it a whole team of people, a whole department?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mr. Craig McCormick, what do you think 2015 is, where do you think integrators should go to make the biggest impact next year?
A couple things. One is a specific technology, obviously, is digital signage. I know, obviously, there's been a lot of digital signage, different applications of it, in the last couple of years. I still think there's a lot of room for growth in that area, and certainly 4K is a primary driver in that. I think you're going to see a lot more interesting and kind of unique applications of digital signage as a result of 4K becoming more prevalent and more affordable, that sort of thing. One other kind of business-related trend that I think is going to become more important in 2015 is more reliance on younger employees in companies, and I just think with all these new technologies, I think younger people are having more of a say, more of an impact than they ever did before. It obviously, this has been an old boys network, to borrow a phrase, for quite a while, but that seems to be changing. Not just that it's not just boys anymore, but I think some of the younger people are having more of an impact and coming up with more of the ideas, just because they know how to use the technology, I think, more than some of the older people, and they know where it can be applied, and they're not afraid to try it.
Yeah, and they're being given opportunities sooner in their careers.
Absolutely.
Whereas 20 years ago when I started, you paid your dues type thing. So. Yep. All right, we're going to move on to an article from Commercial Integrator, actually from Mr. LeBlanc. If you only read 4 articles in 2014, as the name of the article, and there's a number of here. Well, there's 4 actually, because that's the name of the title. But Tom, we'll start with you on this one. You don't have to name all 4; they don't even have to be these 4. But what's 1 or 2 stories that came out of 2014 for you that either knocked your socks off, or holy cow, you don't believe this, or it was just one of those things that this is a significant story from this year?
So that article was a little bit self-serving. Okay. They were all Commercial Integrator articles.
Well, it's your website. If Lindsay does it or Margot does it, she can do 4 from AVTechnology.
Yeah. So I chose articles that I thought were kind of reflective of some important trends in the market, and Craig wrote a great piece. It was the first time we ever did the 40 under 40 coverage in Commercial Integrator, and that's a concept that's been, other publications have done that before. We just wanted to take a crack at it. A really smart guy told me it might be a good idea to look into it. Do you know who that was?
Yes, Chris Netta was a very smart person.
Well, it became apparent that there were a lot of kind of emerging voices in the industry who were about 39, and if we were going to do an article like that, it might be 2014 might have been a good year to do it. And I thought Craig did a fantastic job of finding kind of a lot of really diverse and interesting folks whose voices are kind of emerging in the industry. But it's not just about people who, like have a amplified voice. There's also some people that I think nobody really knew much about, but when you kind of dig into them, you learn, like, for instance, like Michael Shin from AVTechnolgoy.
Yeah.
He doesn't write a blog, or I don't see him on a lot of podcasts or anything like that. He's just a dynamic guy, and he's an example of some of the young people who within their prominent integration firms are helping to shape sort of a refreshing outlook for how to approach the market. And I thought that story was fantastic. But one of the other stories that we covered was about recruiting. I think I included that in the story. Mm-hmm. A link to an article that's sort of just about how recruiting has become so important in this market for some of the reasons that Craig alluded to a minute ago. But it's become tough. It's been tough for integration firms to kind of guide those young, really technology-educated young professionals away from careers in IT and make them understand that careers in AV, one, exist, and two, can be very satisfying and rewarding for them. And I think that's a very important issue in the market right now that probably needs to be talked about even more. And we wrote a little bit about that, so I thought that was important to bring those forward. I'm not going to do 4 articles.
No,
Tim.
you don't
Those are
have to. It's your thing. By the way, 1974 was a very good year. I'm just going to say that. So, and Margot is a 40 under 40. So.
Was.
Oh, aren't you still? I mean, isn't that the thing? Once you. Okay.
I think so.
Because I'm holding on to this sucker for all my life, sister.
It's pretty cool because what one would hope for is to be, doing something that can actually translate in another industry. So, Collaborate, they're looking at meeting intelligence and collaboration as a concept and how it plays out, not just in audiovisual or IT. So that was really a wonderful surprise to have that laurel added to my name. And I think it's a great article. I really enjoyed reading that when I saw the list too. So I want to read the rest of the CI 40 under 42.
Yeah, it's some good folks. It really is. Lindsay, what's one or two things from your standpoint? One or two stories that pop out to you?
I'm going to be boring, and I have to continue along this vein that Craig started us off in the last question, just because I think it is these young people in the industry that really strikes a chord for a lot of people, and there's finally a growing emphasis among them. And also I want to bring it back to that just because when I was recently polling integrators about some of their biggest challenges for next year, the vast majority of them all said it's recruiting, finding young talent. A friend of mine in the industry just had a bidding war between 2 integrators trying to hire him, actually.
That's awesome.
It is awesome, yeah. And in terms of news coverage of that, SCM did our version of featuring young people where we called it the 9 because we really wanted to zero in and focus on a really small cluster of really, really great talent in the industry, and it was really tremendous coverage. Just we went around to a lot of people in the industry just to find who is sort of quietly doing a ton of really awesome things. And we were just so amazed and inspired by a lot of the stories that came out of that, just, where people came from and what kind of things they're doing. So I just cannot talk about that enough, really. And the other thing about it is that people don't realize that AV is a great career option also. This is a little bit of my soapbox, really, because I spent earlier in the year talking with young people in Brooklyn about, hey, the audiovisual industry, an underserved part of Brooklyn where they're installing a free free Wi-Fi network is what it is in their area. And they're actually going to be working on a project in New York City right now that was recently announced about turning old telephone booths into Wi-Fi hotspots in the city.
Oh,
so that's
wow.
something that they're going to be engaged in. But they had no idea that you can, create control interfaces. They were so fascinated about the control and programming side of things, but people were pleasantly surprised to hear, actually, and just, and finding a career in this that it's so interesting to see the way that people came into this industry. Also, in the beginning, or in the earlier days, were either musicians on the one hand, or a lot of people just fell into it by accident and didn't even have college degrees. People in this industry boast about not having college degrees, back in the early days and everything. So it's an opportunity in so many different levels. And it's that recruiting aspect that I hear from other people, really, that is their number one challenge. So that is the story that stands out to me forever. When I go to industry events right now, I always try to find the under 30, if they exist there, or the under 40, just to sort of see what they're doing. And when you survey the room, it sort of takes a minute, but you find those people, and there's a lot of young people coming up, and I just think it's a really fascinating thing to watch.
No, it is. And our buddy and pal, Kelly Perkins, was on your 9 list.
Right.
So she's really great. Actually, I've been doing some things for her for AVI Systems, and my son actually got to do something with her. He was a little reporter, a little 6-year-old AV reporter at the Detroit event. So as soon as that
coverage.
Do what?
I'd like to see his coverage.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, Christians into Legos and Star Wars. I did teach him to say one phrase. If anybody came up with a 3D system to him, to tell him that 3D sucks. So, to which his mother informed me that sucks is a bad word. So, hey. Anyhow, Mr. McCormick.
3D a bad word too?
3D is a bad word, dude. Mr. McCormick, what's 1 or 2 stories from this year for you?
Well, the 40 under 40 was definitely the most fun article.
A fabulously written article, by the way. You could have done 39.
Not just because you were the first one, right?
I did not. The check is in the mail on that.
Yeah, well, and we also had Kelly Perkins on our
exactly.
list too. Yeah, so she's maybe the woman of the year or something in the AV industry.
Somebody should take that up, by the way. One of you two should do a woman of the year thing.
So, yes. The other article I really enjoyed doing, we posted right around Veterans Day, and it was about a company named AVTechnolgoy, and it's run by a guy who was an Iraq War veteran, and his sole focus is to get other veterans who are returning, from combat and no longer deployed and out of the military, working in the AV and IT industries. He's trying to recruit as many as he can, whether they're certified or not. He wants to bring them in. He says he'll train them up himself. He kind of got thrown into the industry a little bit himself when he was in the military. The person that was was above him left the job, and he was kind of thrown into putting together a video conferencing system for General David Petraeus.
Oh.
So he did that without any formal training himself, and so I thought that was a pretty inspiring story, and I'm interested to see kind of how he does in recruiting veterans. I know CompTIA and Infocom both have programs where they try to bring veterans into the industry, and hopefully that'll help to serve him as well.
Okay. All right. Ms. Duahi, you get the chance to do what your 1 or 2 stories were from this year that were significant.
Definitely Phil Hippensteel's article, the influence of IT on AV. And it's, of course, a story that we've all been telling for many years. But I think what I really like about this article and why I really enjoyed working on it with him is that he gives really concrete bullet points about what the AV industry is not considering in greater depth and what you really need to do to participate effectively in IT. And he, of course, teaches IT systems at Penn State Harrisburg, and so he's really our resident, IT expert in our magazine every month. And he just kind of drills down into the concepts that, bandwidth is cheap, but it's not free. So you really need to understand your bandwidth needs before proposing, that IT carrier traffic, how to participate more actively in optimizing your AV traffic, and understanding layer 2 versus layer 3, and IP diffser values. So he really gets granular, and it's a really important read. A lot of readers have asked me for PDFs of it too, which has been nice to get some feedback.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to all the other wonderful mail that we get. But that's a really good one, and that was in our September issue. And then I think every month we do a really great focus on a manager who is innovative in their own right. But a few of them we've made the cover story, and definitely Howard's story, also in September. He's the media director at El Camino Community College in California, and he's just a great interview. It's a really fun read. He talks a lot about how when he first started in the industry that AV and IT were sort of these exclusive fiefdoms, but now they're so much more interrelated, and just how that plays out for him as the distance education coordinator at El Camino and also the media coordinator, and talks a lot about software as a service, software-based AV. So that's the Meet Your Manager with Howard Story, and then also the Phil Hippensteel IT influence on AV for different reasons. Those are two of my favorites.
Yeah, the one with Howard, I know a lot of AV managers still. That used to be what I did, and I forwarded that because there are some that it's still fiefdoms, right? And no, I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying that Howard's story is actually a good not test case, but a good story to say, you know what, it is possible, right? Takes some work, it takes some interpersonal communication skills, but it is possible. You know, it doesn't have to be our stuff and your stuff. So.
Yeah, and this month we actually had one Meet Your Manager with a really great, articulate technology architect, as his title is, with a company in Canada, a telecommunications company called TELUS, and he's also, more of the manager side, who works a lot with both outside integrators as well as the IT department, and he has a really interesting insight in that one of the bigger challenges for him has been that the IT department has an existing network management and trouble ticketing system that they already have in place, and a lot of the AV management applications don't necessarily feed into that help desk system. So he brings up things like that I think a lot of people share. And even when I was teaching at the university level, we had the same issue, within the concept of, where does if there's a problem with a video conferencing, or, say there's some lecture capture problem, who's going to get that trouble ticket with the impending Internet of Things explosion, and Google Glass and Apple, smartwatch, and sort of more being added to the equation. Who on the management side is going to handle it? How does it play out? So there's some really great discussions on that level that are happening that I find really important.
Yeah, you've just hit that tip right there, right? Where the non-technical person touches AV and something goes wrong, where does that go, right? And from there, you can start having conversations internally in universities and other large corporations. But it's answering that question, right? Is where does the trouble ticket go? Because that ultimately is who's responsible for fixing it and making sure it works, regardless if you have any business doing it. So.
Even like if you have legacy equipment, for example, and you have non-native IP speakers and a proprietary AV management system, like one of the famous ones, but who's in charge of that upkeep, that management, and how does that break down? And the new generation of hires, how do they fit into the equation? So it's actually a really interesting time of transition in some ways, and yet, when you look at, again, I go back to the higher ed space because that's my specialty, but looking at some really successful communities like Clemson University just had a $10 million investment in just their audiovisual.
Wow.
We actually didn't run a story on it, but I read a really great piece. It was in Campus Technology on that, just a $10 million investment in the top quality audiovisual. I'm not sure who the integrator is on that, somebody based in Atlanta, I think, but it's just a really interesting moment to say, like, are they going to now bulk up their facility AV team, or who's the onus of the new audiovisual system that they're going to bring on?
Yeah, who owns that and who maintains it and makes sure that it stays refreshed, right? depending on which part of the technology you're talking about. All right, we're going to kick a couple stories from each of your respective magazines before we let you guys go. The first one I found very interesting. Margot shot me this. In our screen-filled world, do we still need HD displays? And actually, Margot, we'll start with you on this. I guess the question goes back to you guys. Do we need it? I mean, you guys, you have all gone to trade shows this year and seen everything from 32-inch on up to 100+ inch displays. Do we still need those things?
I think the question is how best to get the return on the investment. So who's able to use these applications in a way that really benefits not only the evolving user base, whatever it might be, and whatever vertical market it might be, but how does it support the organizational mission? Is it going to be this, one of these closed executive boardroom video conferencing systems with endpoints that isn't going to be used as much as someone would like it because there's not a scheduling system? So I think that because the availability of having FaceTime on your phone and an interactive whiteboard essentially like on your smartphone is a question of, well, now how do we make the most out of the large format displays that we have and or the projection systems that we have? And what I loved about that Brian Nadell article that we ran that I shared with you is looking at some of the ways that entertainment, museum, and education are raising the profile of projection, large format projection in immersive ways, and so using them almost as theater design. So looking at some of those Broadway shows that are listed in that article and how they're using projection. So I think it's just raised the need to keep being creative, to pushing the envelope, because screens are everywhere. They're in the back of taxis. Everybody has a smartphone. You can kind of get screen fatigue. So it's kind of cool and fascinating to see who's using the screens in really innovative ways. What museums. There was a really neat video I watched today of AVI Systems. There's a North Dakota Heritage Museum saw that one.
Yep.
They're using really interesting interactive high def. So that's what I think the article underscores, and with a focus on Broadway, too. So, yeah.
Well, that's something else that's actually changing is the fact that we talked about, who owns what. Using projection and using a lot of the moving head projectors, who owns that, right? Because there are lighting designers who will either say, that's a moving fixture, I absolutely own it. And there are others who are saying, there's video on that, there's no way in the world I own that, right? And so that's another interesting discussion. So, Mr. McCormick, you wrote a very interesting article giving Electrosonic, naming them the 2014 Integrator of the Year. And the reason I say that is for two things. First of all, the picture is from 1974, and again, 1974 was a very good year.
I was one. Thanks for rubbing it in.
Well, me and myself and Mr. LeBlanc were still, we're newborns, So, but how do you guys pick those people? Do people nominate it? Is it a process that you all just kind of get around and say, hey, here's some really groovy people, or how do you work that?
Yeah, we don't have a formal nomination process really. We try to kind of formulate our own idea about who's going to be the Integrator of the Year. Fairly early in the year, we publish. I think it's 9 or 10 profiles every year, cover profiles, and so we try to set it up, and as we're talking about who's going to be a cover profile, we try to think about who deserves, kind of a special recognition as the Integrator of the Year. This year it was Electrosonic, and it is coincidental with their 50th anniversary. We've been wanting to profile them anyway, and it helped that they have their anniversary, but certainly there's a lot more to them than that. And kind of circling back to the conversation we had about young people getting more involved. One of the coolest things I found out with them was their apprentice program, and it's a program that's relatively new, but it's bringing younger people into the company, and kind of making sure it has another 50 years or whatever of success, and I think that's really a model that can be followed. It was something that was started by their CEO, Jim Bowie, just a few years ago, because he kind of realized that a lot of the people that were in decision making positions in the company were getting older. They're even older than me, even older than 41, and that it was kind of time to look to the next generation and kind of turn some of the power and the authority over to them, and without having these young people in place and getting them ready for these positions down the road. Who knows what could have happened to Electrosonic. So I think that was something that I didn't know about when I started interviewing them, but I thought that was kind of a really cool aspect of it as well.
No, it's a very cool aspect. It is one that I wrote about. I've evangelized it ever since I heard it at the CI Summit. Lindsay mentioned, working with students in the Bronx. This type of program, and I'm not saying you all have to go to the Northeast to do this, but encouraging young people to at least, walk alongside you and see what you do on a daily basis. I've had a number of relatives right now, but young people who are 16, 17, 18 years old who have followed me around on my daily, what I do on a full-time basis, and they're interested in electronics, they're interested in music and stuff like that, and they want to see, is this type of industry something I want to do? I have the opportunity because, I see these kids, guys and girls both on a daily and weekly basis, so they know what I do, right? Getting out there though into the public, and that's why I think some stuff like AV Month and AVWeek from Infocom is important, because getting the fact that this career, this industry is out there is important. So, all right, we'll wrap this up. Lindsay, we'll start with you. What's your favorite thing that happened this year? It can be personally, professionally. You got to meet Elvis. I don't know what it is.
Right. No, that's a perfect question, because one thing I was just thinking that we didn't get to, that we kind of glossed over, it was on our original list of stories, was the residential market.
Yes.
And why the story in particular was about why CD was so important this year. But as we're touching on a lot of the same topics here, I was thinking back, I cover both markets. It's really hard sometimes to separate yourself from that. But some of the most interesting things by far happened on the residential side. Dolby Atmos was one of the most exciting things. It's really reinvigorating the audio technology on the consumer level, and pretty much anybody who has ever heard a demo of it, it's awesome. And I think the residential market has really been waiting for a technology like that. A few years ago, the buzz was all about 3D video, 3D projection, and that was one that people were immediately and consistently really skeptical about. Nobody was ever fully sold on 3D changing everything for video.
Because it sucks, Lindsay, that's why. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Right. There was this false buzz trying to be generated by some of the video companies, but nobody was really buying it. And here we have Dolby Atmos, where you walk in and you're just floored immediately. I mean, the shortest 30-second demo where there's a leaf spinning above your head. And it adds so much nuance. And I've done a number of events at Dolby's private theaters in New York, and they have directors come in to talk to you about and the sound mixers to talk about how integrating another level of audio into the mix just totally changes the game for them. And, back at CEDIA, you had Harman in there with, they had dozens of audio channels. They brought a commercial amplifier to their CEDIA booth. So it wasn't even anything that they were selling to the residential market. It was just to knock people's socks off, and it was awesome. So that was the biggest thing in that market, but there were also, obviously the Internet of Things, of course, another buzzword that I absolutely hate, but just the way that everything at home is living on the network. Everybody has their individual devices, and just how that's changing the market and the influence that it has on control systems at home. Also, huge story of CEDIA was the vast simplification of programming for home control systems that there was. Every major control manufacturer introduced a new version of their software and controller that makes it a lot easier to program. And it also gives some programming capabilities, it puts some of those capabilities in the hands of consumers also, which is a little bit risky, but at this day and age where everybody has their smart device, we all want to be able to control some of the things, some of the settings in our home, and we're all relatively literate in those things. So that was another interesting thing out of the show there. Yeah. I could probably go on about that actually, but those were the big ones. I mean, Dolby Atmos is just awesome, and the simplification of control in our lives, and people always cite those trends on the consumer side trickling up to commercial. So yeah, interesting to see how that kind of effect.
The other interesting thing, this is my very first CEDIA ever. The number of people who've jumped on board with Dolby Atmos, right, so quickly. So there is something to be said for that.
And the way that Dolby rolled it out also, I have to mention the way that they made it so you can either cut holes in your ceiling and put speakers in, or they made these really interesting speaker modules that reflect the sound off of your ceiling. And they've made it so you can be a do-it-yourself consumer and do it, or you can, have it for your own private dedicated cinema. So it has the potential to have a really broad reach in the market.
Yeah. Tom, what's one or two things? What was one of your favorite things from this year?
I think my answer is going to be boring compared to Lindsay's, which I thought was interesting. But I'm going to talk about business stuff because I feel like the mood change that I sort of described earlier in our conversation, how it just seems more positive than it did. Like, for instance, we launched Commercial Integrator in 2011, right, Craig?
Yes.
And ever since then, the first couple of years, we wrote a lot of those profile stories that Craig described about companies that were trying to stay afloat and, just doing stuff like rebranding, like how do I figure out how to find my niche in a market? In other words, they didn't have a niche. They were trying to figure out how to dig in. And I'm sick of writing those stories. I like how in, 2014, we got to write a lot of stories about companies that were very forward-thinking and very excited about the growth ahead of them, and very, very excited about growing. A lot of companies are very focused on growth in 2014, and to me, like that was kind of a sea change. The industry feels more positive. I think Infocom was a really impressive show in June. ISE last year grew its attendance. I'm sure it's going to grow its attendance by a lot this year, in 2015. And, DSE was a big show last year. I'm sure DSE will be a huge show this year. The industry just feels strong and positive. And to me, that's my favorite story of 2014.
And I like that. It's not boring. It's good. It's feely. It's touchy-feely and squishy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah. I've been with you way too much this year, dude. I know I'm better than that. Margot, what's one or two of your favorite stories?
Star Trek, The Cronut, and this roundtable right here, right now. That we're going to live on an infinite loop, actually.
Yes. Yes.
But additionally, in addition to that triumvirate, I think just the year of the tech manager. Obviously it's our focus, but we're just seeing an increasing appreciation for the nuanced roles that tech managers have, how that's shifting, how you increasingly see buying decisions happening on that level, the buying power changing just a little bit, and just the use of more easy to use and easy to control systems, how to bring the integrated voice, video conferencing, IM all into one experience, and how the tech manager plays a pivotal role in that, and just appreciating the ecosystem around the integrated audiovisual. I think they're really interesting and focused way in 2014.
All right, very good. Craig, you'll have the last word on this one. What's one or two of your favorite stories from this year?
I wish you had asked me this last year. I think you know what I might have said.
I know exactly what your answer was last year. The Boston Red Sox won something called the World Series.
That would have been it, but
they did not this year.
They certainly did not this year. As for this year, we've talked a lot about it, and kind of we've gone around it a bunch of times. But I think having more young people here, having their voice heard, having an effect on the industry, I think that's one of the coolest things that's happened this year, and I think it's only going to increase in 2015. I think it's important to have new ideas, especially in a technology industry where there's new stuff coming out all the time. There has to be new ways to use it and innovations surrounding it. So I think that's the most important thing of this year.
Okay. All right. Well, that we'll do it. I appreciate all of your time. Like I said, this is one of my favorite things because I appreciate all of you, because without you, I couldn't do this on a weekly basis. You do the really heavy lifting, and I just ask other people what they think about your stories. So with this has been Lindsay Adler. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on. This is her first time, so she did a fabulous job. Associate Editor, Systems Contractor News and Residential Systems. Where can people find you, get a hold of you, follow you if you want?
Yeah, on Twitter you can find me, Lindsay M. Adler, LANDSEYMADLER.
All right. And Residential Systems?
Well, same Twitter handle, but right. Residentialsystems.com is the website, and also AVNetwork.com is the website, the home for SCN and also AVTechnolgoy and a couple other of our brands.
All right. Then Margot, you're up next. Margot Duwahi, the editorial director for AVTechnologoy. Thank you, ma'am.
Congrats. Perfect pronunciation, though, I must say.
I practiced that a lot the last time you were on, by the way. So.
Really fabulous. On Twitter at AVTechnologyMag and AVNetwork.com.
All right, very good. Craig McCormick, editor at large, which means he gets to roam around and look for an internet connection. Where can people find you, sir?
On Twitter at Craig McCormick and commercialintegrator.com, and we're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter.
And of course, last but not least, Tom LeBlanc, the editor of Commercial Integrator, as well as Tech Decisions. Where can people find you, sir?
Yeah, some of the same places that Craig just listed, but I'm also on Twitter at LeBlanc Tom and TechDecisionsMedia.com as well.
And that's LeBlanc with a C, not a K.
Yeah, no, absolutely no
I'm
K.
just making sure that the first time, I think I was mispronouncing your name too for the longest time.
No.
I don't remember.
We'll leave it up to interpretation.
Exactly. It's French. There's an L. There's a L in front of it. So, my name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on Twitter at this point, just because I'm grousing about the Bears. I've become the beating child of the AV industry sports department. So, I got numerous tweets last night, by the way, because the Bears did not play so good, nor last week. So yeah, hey, what do you know? But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. We have a lot of new voices, a lot of new faces. We got some new bloggers coming out. We've also started something with Advanced AV and John Green. And let me just put it away. John Green's involved, Chris Netto's involved, and Hi-Fi Phil Cordella's involved. So you know it's going to be fun. It's the AV sweater contest. Phil has created an AV-centric Christmas song. I swear to you, I've heard it. It's very cool. It's not traditional, that's for sure. But what we're going to do is we're going to take everybody's AV sweater, and you're going to put it up on the social with the hashtag AV sweater, and we'll make a video out of it, similar to what we did for the AV selfie at CEDIA and Infocom. So get your sweaters out, put them on social, and we'll have some fun this holiday season. So, but yeah, get that out, and you'll find out more and more stuff. 4 days to make Kickstarter. So, if you know if you have any rich aunts or uncles, hit them up if you would, please. So yeah, go by the website though, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.